For staying with us. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, to set the tone for the conversation, here is a background report put together by Ibrahim Hamidu.
Yesterday, the Senate approved the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State, following President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's announcement on Tuesday. This decision was made after a closed-door session, where lawmakers invoked Senate orders.
The Senate in a closed session received briefing from the President of the Senate on the circumstances of the proclamation of a state of emergency declared by Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief, Federal Republic of Nigeria, on the state of affairs in Rivers State. And the Senate resolved as follows. 1. The Senate invokes the powers conferred on it by Section 305, subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, and approve the proclamation of state of emergency declared by Mr. President in Rivers State of Nigeria.
But what does this mean for the people of Rivers State? Essentially, the state of emergency gives the federal government the power to appoint a sole administrator to administer the state's affairs. Governor Fubara, his deputy, and all elected members of the Rivers State House of Assembly have been suspended for 6 months. This move is aimed at addressing the prolonged political crisis in the oil-rich South-South state. The House of Representatives has also endorsed the state of emergency, showing a united front from the federal government.
Are we ready for the question? Are we ready? Those in support of this request of Mr. President as amended should say aye. Aye. Those in support of this request from Mr. President as amended should say aye. Those against should say nay. There is have it.
But what's next for Rivers State? The coming weeks will be crucial in determining the outcome of this decision. Will it bring stability to the region, or will it exacerbate the existing tensions? Legislative and constitutional experts will discuss the implications of the state of emergency in Rivers State and what it means for the country's democracy.
All right. Many thanks, Ibrahim, for the background report. And to speak on the state of emergency in Rivers State, it's a pleasure to welcome right here in the studio Dr. George Agbakahi, a public policy analyst. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, while we expect some other guests to join us, let me welcome you again, Dr. Agbakahi, to this conversation. What's your initial reaction? Of course, a proclamation was made and approval was sought. 2 different versions of approval came. What do you make of all of this?
Thank you very much again for having me. You see, the issue of proclamation of a state of emergency in Nigeria is not a recent phenomenon. I remember vividly during the President Obasanjo era, I think in 2004, when there was probably a religious crisis or ethnic crisis in Plateau State, President Obasanjo issued proclamation of emergency on the 18th, I believe, of March or May in 2004, and also suspended Governor Joshua Daira as well as the State House of Assembly. Similarly, in 2011, during the regime of President Goodluck Jonathan, there was also a proclamation of state of emergency in Borno State, in some local governments in Borno State. And at the same time, it happened again in 2014, some months before the general election of 2015. So it is not a recent, phenomenon, in my view. I think in this case, we all know the genesis. Every Nigerian knows the genesis of this current crisis, But I think the president, in my own opinion, did the right thing by issuing this proclamation of state of emergency, particularly when you consider the significance of River State in Nigerian politics and economic life. If you go to the Niger Delta area, River State is like the capital of the Niger Delta. River State produces about 21.43, percent in terms of, oil production. Go to River State, there are over 150 multinational corporations, stationed in Port Harcourt and environs. So I think it's very important that the president did this to forestall, anarchy. What has been going on in River State is unheard of politically. For over 1 year, there has been this bickering between the political, power players in River State, and more especially, the governor and the speaker of the House of Assembly, the state has been kind of ungovernable, for the past several listening. And, section 305, as well as section 11 of the Nigerian Constitution, made it abundantly clear that the president, has the right to institute this proclamation.
So what do you make of, the sittings of both the Senate and the House of Representatives and the amendments to the proclamation or to the, emergency rule that came out of both houses yesterday?
As per the Constitution, I think Chapter 8, Part 2, and of Section 305 of Nigerian Constitution made it abundantly clear that the president needs to send this gazette to the National Assembly so they can vote on this proclamation. I think he did the right thing, and it's also left for the House and the Senate to make amendments as they choose fit. And you know very well that the president also has the power to withdraw, this proclamation of state of emergency, depending, on the stability in River State. It's possible. He was the person that instituted it. He also has the right, to withdraw it at any point in time. I think.
Many thanks, Dr.
Yes.
Bakahi, for your opening comments, on the state of emergency in River State. But many people, are opposed to the manner in which the members of the National Assembly voted, on this matter. Some have said that the voice vote, may not necessarily give, some members the opportunity to air their view about the situation. What's your take?
Well, I think in every democracy, both in advanced democracies, the National Assembly chooses their own way of voting. I know very well that in the US, in some cases, they also use voice vote. So I don't really see, if it's in agreement, with members of the National Assembly that voice vote should be used to count. I don't think there is nothing wrong with it, in my view.
No, but back to the amendment which Victor was trying to ask you about. Let's look particularly at the fact that the lawmakers are insisting that a ad hoc committee is set up, to oversight River State instead of the presidency doing that. What does that say about all of this?
Well, if you base it on the Constitution, like I've cited, that particular section 35, Chapter 8, Part 2, it made it abundantly clear that it's the president that will institute proclamation of state of emergency, after which he will now transmit it to the National Assembly. It's not the other way around. So I think the president did what is constitutional, what is appropriate, and also what is timely.
No, but that's not the contention. The president did right by the country, right? But that's past now. Yesterday, the National Assembly had to deal with this, as you just mentioned, required by law, and it came with amendments. While the House of Representatives insisted on oversighting, making laws for the state while all this lasts, the Senate wants everything to end within the 6 months. A reconciliation committee to be set up to reconcile the aggrieved parties or the warring parties, among others. So what do you make of all of this?
Well, I think every Nigerian wants the best for River State. If having a committee in place to look into the affairs of River State in order to bring stability, I think is a step in the right direction. But you have to understand, like I pointed out, the genesis or the history, of this quagmire in River State. You are well aware that the president at some point has gotten involved in brokering peace, mediating peace, among the affected parties. It didn't work. The judiciary has also done a similar thing, with some rulings, requiring the state governor and the state House of Assembly to work together in order to bring stability to that particular state. But it didn't work as well. That's why I say that essentially the president took the right decision. Listen, let me tell you, if President Obasanjo in 2003/2004 had instituted a proclamation of state of emergency in Plateau State, over 2,000 to 3,000 people that perished, that died in that conflict, would have been alive today. So, see, our president is a seasoned politician who understands the intricacies and underpinnings, both in politics and governance. He's looking at the future. River State is the treasure of this country. And if he did not handle this in this particular way, there will be chaos. Like I said, over 95% of our revenue as a country comes from Niger Delta. So if there is chaos in that place, there was already a present danger of instability in the country, in River State. And if the president hadn't instituted this proclamation, truly, in my view, the state House of Assembly would have tried to impeach Governor Fubara. If you watch the political trajectory in River State, they would have impeached him, and there would have been chaos in River State, which will lead to economic misfortune of this great country.
All right. Well said, Dr. George Agbakahi. It looks like we have a second guest Okay, once that connection is better, of course, good enough, would have a second guest join us for this conversation. Going forward, you already talked about, this stopping the impeachment process, which, the House of Assembly would have, started, or if you like, had already attempted to start and all of that. But now that we're here, River State has a sole administrator. What would you expect the sole administrator to be doing at this point?
Well, I believe the sole administrator is a man of immense integrity who served this country well. I think in the Navy, is somebody that is well respected in the Niger Delta. Having served as the naval chief. What I really expect him to do is to remain neutral in the issues of River State. And also engage the contending powers there in order to fashion out a way, to bring stability to the state. It's very important. If he goes in there and start taking sides, that's where we will also have problem. And like I said, if there are tendencies that there will be absolute peace and stability in River State, at some point the president, being somebody who is very sagacious, may call this state of emergency off, because he wants the best for River State, considering the significance of River State to the overall economy of Nigeria.
All right, Dr. Agbakahi, thank you very much. Going forward, given the situation of things at the moment, there's a sole administrator, the National Assembly wants a committee to reconcile parties. How do you think that they can make progress in this regard?
Like I said earlier, I think this is a work in progress. The main point is that there is already a state of emergency in River State, which means that will definitely preclude any action that will try to derail, the functioning of government. See, the president has instituted a lot of both economic and political reforms, which we all know. So I don't think the president or the government will sit by and see chaos emanate in River State and destroy all he has tried to do in the past 18 months.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Agbakahi. Looks like we have with us now, joining us via Zoom from Calabar, Dr. Ita Enang, former presidential aide, lawyer, and former senior special assistant to the president on Niger Delta Affairs and senior special assistant to the president on National Assembly, Senate specifically. Many thanks, Dr. Ita Enang, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll just begin with your thoughts on, the National Assembly standing with the president on the decision to suspend the River State governor, the deputy, and of course, the members of the State House of Assembly. What are your thoughts on this decision?
That I should congratulate Mr. President, because it was a little edgy whether the National Assembly, particularly the House of Representatives, would be able to pass the resolution, but they have passed it, and then the Senate has also passed it, and so Mr. President has won. And again, let me congratulate the Senate and the House of Representatives for reasoning with Mr. President and reasoning with the people of the of River State. I anticipate that the National Assembly, Mr. President, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice should brace up for a multiplicity of litigations in view of the possible interpretation of Section 305, subsection 6, which requires that it should be a vote of at least of 2/3 of all the members of the House of Representatives and all the members of the Senate, that is of each house. And it is doubtful, and it is an issue, whether a voice vote in this case will satisfy the provisions of Section 305, subsection 6C, which requires a vote of 2/3 of all the members. Because 2/3 of all the members of each chamber is not 2/3 of that present. And you cannot determine 2/3 by a voice vote or overwhelming majority. First, there will be the votes and proceedings, which will show where my senator, Aneka Mbasi, voted, where the persons that represent Bayelsa East, Bayelsa West, where the person that represents Port Harcourt West, Borno East voted, so that he can say, yes, I voted against, or no, I voted for. So this is going to be an issue. And we're on the streets. We consult and work on legislative matters, monitoring, and so on. So we've heard a few of this. So, and I urge the National Assembly on its own, to take advantage of the Supreme Court Additional Jurisdiction Act, which we passed in 2002-2003 under the leadership of Galileo Mangaaba, when we had several disputes with President Obasanjo, as he then was, and seek for the interpretation of this section, so that the question of 2/3, whether a voice vote can amount for a determination of all or 2/3. But that's just for the argument. But I'm just asking them to brace up. Meanwhile, congratulations to Mr. President, congratulations to the Senate, congratulations to the House of Representatives, and above all, congratulations to the people of Rivers State.
Dr. Taidang, thank you very much, but I'm staying with you. Beyond the controversy surrounding the numbers, well, it has passed somehow, but what do you make of the additional, clauses, if you may, that came from both houses? Of course, the House of Representatives insisting on making laws in the meantime for the people of Rivers State, and then the Senate insisting that every issue should be resolved within these 6 months and not more, and that there should be a committee that will attempt at least to reconcile the warring parties in Rivers State.
Yes, the Senate is right, because we cannot just allow a situation that we expect that after 6 months it will be automatically be over. There must be steps taken to reconcile the House of Representatives, House of Assembly faction, and the President and the Mr. Governor's team, so that they can work together after that. Now, the question of making laws for Rivers State at this time falls on the National Assembly, because in a case like this, the National Assembly becomes the legislature for Rivers State, and so that's not much in doubt. And I heard Mr. President in his declaration and the Gazette published, saying that all other matters will have to be approved by the Federal Executive Council. What the Gazette states is what it states in matters that are executive. But at this time, it is the National Assembly that becomes the that becomes the lawmaking body for Rivers State.
Many thanks, Dr. Enang. You're a lawyer. Let us know what the Constitution, says about all of this. I mean, from the start, declaration by the President, what the National Assembly has done, where we are, having the sole administrator. The Constitution, I mean, is it in tandem with what has played out?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm asking that, what does the Constitution say in a situation like this? What has played out so far from, the declaration of the state of emergency to, having the sole administrator in Rivers State, and then the actions of the National Assembly. Is it in support of what the Constitution says?
As at now, you know, when we had the declaration in 2013, it was a situation where the democratic structures were not suspended. But under the declarations, under the Obasanjo administration, and I think one thereafter, we had the democratic structure suspended. That is the House of Assembly. So the House of Assembly was suspended. And when the House of Assembly is suspended and there is no legislative body, the National Assembly steps in as the legislative body. Now, I will urge the National Assembly to make laws on the procedure for state of emergency. Particularly, we look at the standing orders, but that standing orders is only what happens and what operates within you. When we had the state of emergency under the President Obasanjo administration, I was chairman of Rules and Business, and we tried to work under the state of the State of Declaration of Emergency Act, as it was. We discovered that that provision was not imported into the laws of the Federation again operating at that time. And when we looked again, it was the state of emergency that came up under 1967 or so. And so we could not draft the appropriate instrument in the House of Representatives at that time. You know, when I was chairman of Rules and Business, I think 2005, 2006, 2007, I can't be precise, please forgive me. But the National Assembly must feel this challenge and then make appropriate laws for declaration of a state of emergency, where it will state whether the democratic institutions like the House of Assembly of the state can be done away with, whether the governor can be suspended, because there is a dispute. There is a dispute now that under the Jonathan administration, the legislative house and the governor was not suspended. But at that time, my argument is that the subject matter of the declaration was not the action or inaction or miscalculation of the governor or the House of Assembly, and so it was not necessary at that time to suspend those democratic institutions. But when the subject matter and the positive factor is the governor, the executive, and the legislature, and none of them is able to function. Now, the question of the legitimacy, the good conscience of the president comes in. As Mr. President said, no good and reasonable president would watch this event. A good and reasonable president, as President Tinubu, has taken the appropriate action by asking the state executive, the governor, to stand suspended, the House of Assembly stand suspended. So it is appropriate for the National Assembly to take care and make laws for Rivers State at this moment. This we took account of under the when Amechi had issues with his own House of Assembly. I think in 2013 or 2014, and that is why I've always said that Rivers State, who did this to you? Who did this to you, Rivers State? Because since after Odili, I repeat, under Amechi governorship of 8 years, the Rivers State House of Assembly was in chains, in pain, and almost killed. Then under Wike, it was like saying, I learned from the master. I know Aristotle, the great master who taught Alexander. That is, Amechi taught Wike. Wike came and taught Fubara. And Fubara came and finished them all. So when you have this kind of situation, now the National Assembly has to step in and make laws. Thank you.
Tenang. Now, isn't it the case now that all of these make it very complicated? Because like you said, you've pointed out the governor is involved, the state assembly is involved in this whole situation. But How then will the federal government and the state government actors work together towards peace within the 6 months? 6 months will look long, but in no time at all, you'll find that it's nothing if you don't begin the process of reconciling the aggrieved parties. And how do we measure, what parameters do we use to measure progress within the period?
The Constitution has said that it should not last for 6 months in the first instance. And I know President Tinubu is a Democrat and would ordinarily try to prevent every situation that will prevent the matter from lasting or exceeding 6 months, because he would want the democratic structures to work. Remember, President Tinubu, as governor of Rivers State, as governor of Lagos State, I beg your pardon, fought by every means to sustain democracy in Nigeria, to sustain democracy in Lagos. And even when he was denied of funds for what he believed he had the powers to do under the Constitution, he still fought and took his stand. And after that, working as leader of the party, working as leader of opposition, and ensuring he took every step to make sure that democracy did not. He took great steps to make sure that the third term did not succeed. He took every step to make sure that the AD, ACN, and now APC won. So he will not want to truncate to exceed 6 months. Now that is why when we visited him, he told us the leaders of the South, Pan Niger Delta, go and resolve. And the National Assembly, the Senate and the House are interested in coming for resolution. So the best that can happen now is to set timelines of 2-3 months when each of this will take steps, and we see them sit together while the administrator is working, and they make sure that they are ready to take over, and the 6 months will now, at the end of 6 months, Iborete Ekwe Ibas will now step down at the instance of Mr. President and the National Assembly, and the Fubara as governor and all the members of the House of Assembly will now be sufficiently calm and cooled to resume, knowing that at that time that they are working for Rivers State of Nigeria and not as for individuals.
Dr. Enang, would let you breathe after this last question, and maybe return to the studio before we get back to you. But I'd like to find out, reading the body language of the National Assembly, yesterday, when they, went about the voice vote and all, and the amendments made, and the National Assembly insisting that the sole administrator there should be a committee, rather, to oversight Rivers State. That means the sole administrator is reporting to the National Assembly, not to the president, as it should be. What does this say?
What the Constitution said, supported by 2/3 of all the members of each house of the National Assembly. Now, each house, the resolution must be harmonized, because there is no House of Representatives decision cannot bind the president, cannot bind the executive, they cannot bind on this situation. The Senate alone cannot. They must harmonize and pass one resolution to the House of Representatives. And pass one resolution and transmit it to Mr. President. If there is a division or a difference between what the Senate passes and what the House passes, then there must be conference. But there is a question of the legality or otherwise, whether the National Assembly, either the Senate or House, can amend anything that the President has sent, or whether they can only say yes or no to what Mr. President has sent. There is a little bit of a dispute, and I think that if they had to make any alteration to any decision in what Mr. President has sent, they ought to have done that at the time Mr. President consulted with the Senate President and the National Security Team before making the resolution. They ought to have done that at the time that before the Office of the Attorney General completes the drafting of the resolution and the gazette that was sent, or before, while consulting with themselves. Because what normally happens is that the House will consult, the Speaker will be working with the House members trying to arrive at a resolution. They may have a draft in the executive session. The Senate will be working. If they have that draft at the executive session, they try to agree in-house between the Senate leadership and the House leadership before they come to, each chamber comes to sit and pass their resolution. But if they couldn't, and of course if there was a frenzy they couldn't, they should, after this passage, try to harmonize before they forward it to Mr. President. Because Mr. President cannot obey what the House says differently and what the Senate says differently, because the Constitution says there shall be a National Assembly. And the National Assembly is made of the two houses, and what it says different from the other is not a resolution of the National Assembly.
Dr. Enang, thank you very much. You can take your deserved rest for a moment. Let me get back here in the studio, Dr. Agbakahi. You have mentioned earlier that the sole administrator in Rivers, Iboite Ibas, should be dispassionate and shouldn't take sides. But I ask, what exactly will be his role beyond occupying the office? What should he be doing within these 6 months?
Well, I think his major duty at this point essentially will be to maintain peace and stability. That's the most important thing for him in Rivers State, considering the fact that Rivers State and Niger Delta as a whole is the treasure of Nigerian economy. But at the same time, he also needs to govern. He has to govern the state for 6 months, and truly he may not govern alone. He will have aides. Not necessarily
because when he's not from Rivers State, so he's going to have a cabinet.
Not necessarily a cabinet, but definitely he will have aides that he will work with. In other words, you can also call it a cabinet, because he cannot work alone. He may have special assistants. I don't think he will start appointing commissioners at this point, because if he's appointing commissioners, there is no House of Assembly to go through the commissioner list.
Well, the National Assembly is there. The House of Representatives is providing that cover.
But truly, in my view, he needs to have some aides, where they can work on some policy issues, But the most important is maintenance of peace and stability, and, preventing hoodlums, from attacking the gas and oil installations and infrastructure in Rivers State.
All right. I'd like to get back to Senator, or if you like, Dr. Ita Enang now. As we round off the conversation, what do you expect the suspended governor, Simi Fubara, to be doing, at this time? And, of course,
House of Assembly members.
The House of Assembly members that have also been suspended.
I think, please let me just interject in one of the issues that has been raised by my colleague, the guest in the studio, that the administrator should form a cabinet, should take dispassionate persons and form them, and what he should not be doing is not just to govern and maintain peace and order, it's not to maintain just peace and order. Education has to go on, agriculture has to go on, infrastructure has to go on, contractors have to be paid. There may be other emergency things that he may consider appropriate to do. So there must be governance, because the people of Rivers State have suffered from non-governance. It has been like running on autopilot, Now, what the Rivers, so they should form a cabinet, should have aides. If he can, he should make it multi-partisan. He should make it a lot representative of all interests. Yes, I know where it is not certain whether River State is PDP or APC, it is not certain. The governance in River State was like hermaphroditic, So he should try to maintain, take all the political interests and form a cabinet. Coming to what the governor and the House of Assembly members should be doing, because he's still the governor. He's only suspended from office. His immunity still persists, and his rights and privileges still persist. It's only that his signature, whether read or green pen, is not going to be valid again for the period of 6 months. So he should be provided all his privileges of security and others. Now, what he should again be doing at this time is to be humble. To be humble. The House of Assembly members should also be humble. The House of Assembly members should know that they have a political future. There are young men in just beginning legislative business. There are persons who began as councillors, State House of Assembly, and became House of Representatives and Senators. They have just started. They should not allow holding on to the tail of a person to destroy their political career. They should also know, they should go back to their constituencies, each of them, and ask their constituents, the people they represent, did I do well? Did I do well? Should I continue in this way? And take advice from their constituents, whether they should be loyal to a person, or whether they should be loyal to the constitution and loyal to their constituents, and then make peace, and then come back within 3 months and show that they are ready to work together as in forming a government in River State and work for the government of River State.
Go, Senator Tainang. What's the way forward? How do the National Assembly merely talked about setting up a committee and trying to make peace between the parties. What kind of persons should be in this committee? How should they proceed? Should they have to call the parties together? What's the way forward?
Well, I had a discussion before Mr. President's action with some leaders in the National Assembly. And I had suggested that they should get a situation where the leader of the House, leader of the Senate, and some principal officers and some select elders of the National Assembly, sitting National Assembly, and if they wish, they can make some former members of the National Assembly as a committee of the legislature to interface with both parties and bring them together. It wasn't going to be easy for the governor to, on his own, say, come, because there is a pride on each side. There is a pride on each side. Unfortunately, a pride that did not make each of them to know that they had a responsibility to the people and a responsibility to the Constitution. They each were doing buga on their own, by themselves. It's my turn. I am governor. Who are you? They were each doing buga that I am speaker, I am a member, honorable member. They should now calm down, and then the National Assembly should intervene. Give timelines for the first meeting, second meeting, take issues from both sides, and then agree to this thing, and then report to the Senate President and the Speaker. And the National Assembly should be the truth broker and the peacemaker amongst them, and then report to Mr. President, then answer that we've done this, we've done this. Get them to sign a peace accord at the end of it, and then come back to Mr. President, after which Mr. President, considering all of it, taking security advice, will now agree that after the 6 months, the state of emergency should be lifted. But it is also possible, because Mr. President, as the author of the state of emergency, can abridge the period if he considers that they have been sufficiently debriefed of the mental malfeasance.
Right, many thanks, Dr. Ita Enang. You've spoken so well, and I'm sure people of Rivers will be, wishing you were one of maybe someone who is in charge of the state at the moment. Anyways, it's time to round off the conversation. Dr. Wakahi, what will be your advice to Rivers people? I mean, it's all about them at this point.
Yeah. I believe no matter what the National Assembly says or what the proclamation is all about, the issue in Rivers State has to be resolved by former Governor Wike and Governor Fubara. They are friends. They are like father and son. They've worked together for the past several years. I think both of them need to swallow their pride and come together for the benefit of the Rivers people. Then in that respect, I would call on all Nigerians, particularly indigenes of Rivers State. We should all search our conscience and reach out to one another at this critical point in this proclamation of emergency in Rivers State. And, rededicate ourselves anew to democratic ideals of peace, of tolerance, sacrifice, respect for the individual as a source of public authority. At this point, I think we all need to exercise self-restraint and respect for the rule of law. That is the only way, we can have peace and stability in Rivers.
Do you see a role for the National Peace Committee here, led by General Abdul Salam Abubakar?
Well, they always have a prominent role to play in anything about peace and stability. But I believe, let's see what the National Assembly will come out for. Then we know how they can now. The Peace Committee will come in.
All right, Senator Itai, and your final thoughts. 30 seconds as we round up the conversation.
Well, I wish Rivers people well. I thank Mr. President for taking this step at this time. And every person to just return to the table and then know that it is Rivers State first. The people of Rivers State first. And the governor and the House of Assembly members, they are the servants of the people of Rivers State. They are the masters. And so servants don't exercise the kind of audacity they each exercise. They each exercise so that there will be peace. They should be humble so that the peace can return and they can return to office if they are still interested.
Dr. Itai, former presidential aide, a lawyer, former senior special assistant to the president on Niger Delta Affairs, and also senior special assistant to the president on National Assembly, the Senate. Many thanks for being our guest. We do appreciate your insights on the program this morning. That's it for this conversation. And of course, Dr. George Agbakahi, public policy analyst, many thanks for being our guest. We appreciate you sincerely.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into our second conversation. Stay with us.